Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us for BAM Education. We have the Ocala office on as well. So there may be some questions at the end and some question opportunities at the end, excuse me. So if you guys stay tuned for those at the end of the video. Today's class is talking about working with sellers. Last week, we spoke about working with buyers. In our brokerage, we really want you to have the experience to work with both sides. It is important to be able to navigate both sides of the transaction, not only so you can represent your client individually on that side of the transaction, but also if you are a buyer's agent and you have experience working with the listing side, then you can foresee some obstacles that could come up for your client as a buyer. You also understand what the listing agent is working with sometimes, and it just helps you appreciate situational obstacles that could come up. So it's important to be able to work both sides of the transaction. So today, talking about working with sellers. First, we're going to go into speaking about a little bit about what we recommend is a seller's consultation. Okay, just like with a buyer, you're going to have a buyer's consultation. In listing a property, you want to work with the sellers. Sometimes that means that you have to go and have like a pre-listing consult, and then you're kind of dividing up some of the details that you share during that time period. The reason you may need a pre-listing consult is if you're not familiar with the home and you're not familiar with the possible upgrades. If the home is a hard comp, meaning it's hard to find a price point for it, you want to get in there and find out what's unique about it. Also, sellers like to say, I mean, we are all proud of our properties, right? Everybody's super proud. So what one person may think is an upgrade may not truly be the upgrade that they emphasize over the phone. So it's better to have that in person, right? The presentation matters as well, not just what they spent on the actual upgrade. So either make sure you're scheduling a seller's consultation as far as a pre-listing consult so that you can get in and walk through the home, or with the seller, initially while you're going through all of the things. When you work with sellers, you want to be personal and relatable. These days, consultations can even be over the phone if you're familiar with the property, like a Zoom meeting, because everybody's schedules are different, and because we do electronic signatures, that allows for it. Also, because some people are still scared of sicknesses and they may not feel comfortable meeting one-on-one. Another reason why you may do a virtual or on the phone is if one person could be present, but the other person, the other decision maker couldn't be present, then you could, be flexible and offer that as well. All decision makers should be present for your consultation. Just like when you're working with buyers, you definitely have to have all decision makers present. I recommend doing it all inclusively. It is very difficult to have a conversation with the wife and then follow up with the husband on the phone later. If they're not together, they're not hearing the concerns that each other has. They're not hearing your responses to the individual concerns, and you may leave something out. So it's important to be with them collectively, whether, like I said, you use the flexibility to be in person, virtual, or on Zoom, or whatever the case is. The reason why we say consultations is because we get super eager when we get leads, right? Especially if you're new to real estate, there's a lot to consider and your mind's probably going to start jumping all over the place. And it's really just important to have like all your ducks in a row up front and be able to sit and present. A lot of times also the consultation is when you win those clients over. They may be interviewing many other agents for the job to sell their home. So you want to be able to take this time to have the consistency needed, the systems set up, and have just a really good flow about you. And if you're new to real estate, you're definitely going to be practicing this with your mentors, with other new agents in the office. Do your presentations, copy off of each other, vibe off of each other. When I started real estate, I had no experience, but I had sat in the office with my mentor, Vicky, for over almost 2 years, just listening to her conversations, right? So I really had a good handle on some of the ways that she responded to things. It wasn't unique to me. It was just stuff that I had heard her and how her tone was and her temperament, how she problem solved. And that was a huge benefit to me as well. So when you're in your seller's consultation, you want to discover what their goals are, right? So like every situation is different. When someone's ready to sell their house, it could just be because they have too many kids and they need more space. It could just be because their career has taken off and now they can finally afford to upgrade their home. It could be the opposite. It could be because they're retiring and the house that they have is too much, or their children are off to college and they need a smaller space, or it could be because they have to relocate. There are a lot of different reasons, as you know, that someone would sell their home. So definitely discover what their goals are, the reason behind everything, and keep that in mind as you proceed through your presentation as well as your transaction. Be mindful of the things that they say. As I said, people are proud of certain things. So if they've said it, it's either a major concern for them or it's something that they're extremely proud of. Okay. Also, in your consultation, it's a great opportunity to go over the main steps of a transaction. So for me, the main steps of a transaction when I'm selling a home is, okay, guys, now that you've decided that we are going to be a great fit for each other, let's talk about some of the main steps that are going to happen. We're going to go through all the documentation and make sure that I know everything I need to know about your house so that I can, one, convey it the right way, and two, share it with the buyer's agents when the time comes, so that the buyers have all the information they need to know. Secondly, we're going to stage and prep your home. You're going to start removing 50% of your contents. We're going to touch up any paint, decide whether or not you want to remove family photos and patch up the walls, because, hey, keep in mind, all of the listing photos go on the internet and they're there permanently to stay. So if your family photo is big, that could be an obstacle. Plus, everybody that walks in your house knows exactly who your family is. Some people have an issue with that, some people don't. Next step will be, after we stage the house, we're going to have a videographer come in, we're going to have a photographer come in, they're going to take amazing photos of your home, which is why it's so important that we stage it and declutter it and things like that. And then we're going to get your listing live. We're going to market the heck out of it. And of course, you want to talk a little bit about your stages of marketing. And then, after that, when contracts come in, I will present them as they come. And then, we will proceed to work through the contracts. So you want to keep it really uplifting and positive, and you have got your crap together. You know exactly what's going on, and just super positive when you're in your consultation, because like I said, a lot of times this is the chance you have to sell yourself to these people, right? So definitely do that by being confident in what you're saying and speaking positively about what you're saying. There are times when you want to discuss the obstacles, like if they have a bedroom that doesn't actually have a technical closet, hey, we can mention that, but there's an obstacle there. Or if they have a room that they're using as a bedroom, but you have to pass through it to get to other main features in the home, then, those might be obstacles. If the roof is old, could be an obstacle. If they have open permits for a recent upgrade, could be an obstacle. You just want to go through those things with them. Talk about the upgrades they've had, talk about possible permits, and talk about their mortgage, excuse me. You want to know what their mortgage balance is, if they have a secondary mortgage that they have to pay off, and if there are any liens. So you can choose to do a pre-listing lien search. There are some title offices that will do that for you as part of knowing that they're going to close the transaction for you later. And they will do that because you've given them business, or our office has given them business, and they can trust it because it is something that takes time for them. But the idea behind knowing all of the information about the mortgages is because you want to make sure that in the end, if you sell the property for said price and they pay their closing costs and your commissions, or all of the commissions, and they pay off their mortgages, are they going to be able to, one, clear the transaction, right? The last thing you want to do is a seller thinks they're getting so much money for their sale, but yet they have to show up with 10 grand at the closing table because we didn't know they had that second mortgage they had to pay off, right? So just do your homework about the property. Ask questions over the phone if you can, so that you're able to present properly in person. Okay. We're going to move on to the prepping to sell stage. This is a pretty simple, put together kind of stage. It is all inclusive of a lot of things. The biggest thing that I think as a realtor you need is, when you're prepping to sell, you need documentation, and you want it all. Okay, so think about the property. Is it in an HOA? It is. Okay, so I need this HOA document. I need to know all the details about the fees, when they're due, who the contact person is, the management company or the board of director, or whoever it is. I need the docs and covenants to be able to share, because we have to disclose that information within so many days of contract, right? You want to go ahead and have it now, because scrambling later is going to be complicated. You want to talk about if it's got pre-lead based paint disclosure, if it has I'm trying to think anything. Oh, we have to do our seller's disclosures. All those type of documents, go ahead and have them taken care of up front. Okay. And talk to them about why they're signing it. Disclose that, right? We have to disclose to our buyers anything about the home. So we're going to fill this form out now, because it makes it simpler. And then you upload that to your listing as well, so it's easier to transition to the buyers. Also discuss with them when they're prepping their home, do they want to do a pre-home inspection, right? So a lot of times sellers will opt to do that, especially if they're not traditionally handy around the home. They may want to know what could be unforeseen. It's a few $100s. Someone comes in and does basically a home inspection, right? And it can give them a heads up and a little bit of a head start on doing any repairs prior to going under contract. Also, during your prepping to sell phase, you want to go through, like I said in the previous section, I like to tell them to go ahead and remove 50% of their contents, because if we sell in 4 weeks, then it's going to be super important and you'll already have had most of it packed up. Telling them to remove in advance 50% of their contents is basically a very nice and gentle way of telling them to clean up. Put things away off the counters, remove clutter. You want clean, open spaces. I also try to tell them, yes, everybody opens a closet door. People look underneath cabinets and they look in drawers. So that type of stuff, though, could be an ongoing thing that they do after the home is listed. But presentation is what sells a lot of times, on top of just the fundamental valuable things, right? So when they're prepping and they're packing and they're getting their house ready, also consider if they're going to be able to store things that are valuable and any safety issues. Okay. Firearms need to be under lock and key or just completely removed from the property, and sentimental valuables and extremely valuable things should be put under lock and key as well, so that there are no concerns for, one, if someone will obtain the firearm and do something devastating. Two, we don't want people to steal, and we hope that the buyer's agents who are there are very mindful and watching over their clients. But we know people are people. We just try to encourage them to protect what's important to them, right? Go over and create a marketing plan. We have a marketing plan brokerage wide. If you like to do something different, go over that with them, tell them what it is, take examples of the marketing materials with you so that they can see what you're going to be doing. That's a great thing to bring to your consultation. Okay. Things to take with you to your listing on multiple occasions. If you're going to that property, you should consider keeping a full broker MLS sheet with you, a copy of the property card that's printed, know what the tax information is, take a measuring tape to make sure you can measure the rooms, and always have printed copies of all the disclosures that have been been signed, excuse me, in case you need the information to share with another agent that shows up, or if you're showing the property yourself to a possible buyer, you want all your information. And I know that it sounds like, oh, I'm already going to know all this, right? Because I'm the listing agent. But I promise you that when you are working with multiple transactions at a time and you have multiple things in your pipeline, you will get a little jumbled and it will be hard to maintain a full memory of everything. So it's really great just to have resources with you. So we are a digital brokerage. We like to keep everything online and in the cloud. If that's how you prefer to work, that's great. But just remember, you don't have internet service everywhere. So I would recommend a super compact folder that you can take with you when you show up at your properties. Do you guys have any questions so far? Anybody that's on? All right, well, we're just going to keep moving along to showings. Also, make sure that you have great conversations in your consultation or your listing appointment with your sellers about how showings work and what are some of their concerns about the showings. Explain how the showings work. Vacant or occupied will likely determine some of those details. For example, if it's vacant, you're likely going to just put an electronic lockbox on and allow agents to come and go. But take the time to explain the difference between an electronic lockbox and a coded lockbox. Help them understand and appreciate that this is something that we do above and beyond so that we know who's coming and going out of the property. It's also important to tell them about that even the property is occupied and they're okay with it, but definitely talk about the differences in lock boxes. Talk about the fact that they cannot be there for showings. I mean, it is their right to be in the home, but it is detrimental to a showing. Whether you're showing it or whether another buyer's agent is showing the property, it is uncomfortable for the sellers to be present. If there are pets there, discuss how that will be handled, because a lot of times, it can be difficult to accommodate showings if the pets are home. They can either be crated or someone can arrange to come to the home to remove the animals prior to the showings. That could be an obstacle if that person works. So you want to talk about timeframes for showings. How much notice do you need in advance? Things like that. If the home is occupied, the new trend is for people to require or request the listing agent to be present. And previously my mentor had told me, always be present. You are the best person to advocate for that showing. Be there, open the door, see if the buyer's agent wants any details about the home. And I tell you that is a great concept. However, sometimes it can also create an obstacle. Sometimes, just like if you were the seller, a buyer or a buyer's agent may feel uncomfortable. So if your seller is requiring it, make sure your buyer's agent knows it up front. Do a quick introduction and ask them to please, advise you if they have any questions or concerns, but you're going to stay in this area of the house. Don't follow them around and, all that kind of stuff. If they want you to showcase the home because, hey, you've got the most experience and you know everything about it, and maybe it's a super unique property or maybe it's a massive farm, then definitely try and present that as a positive touch to the buyer's agent, right? Hey, my client would love for me to be present just because of so many things that are different about this property. So would it be okay if I give you guys a quick tour and then I can leave you to any discussions that you have privately? So there's just a lot of different ways you can handle that, but be sure to have these conversations with your with your seller as well, not just, know how you're going to handle it. It's important to have conversations with your sellers about this because their concerns are going to be how you proceed moving forward. When you receive offers, because hopefully you receive them right away, but not always. So when you receive offers, they can come one at a time. They can come all at once. Back in COVID, they came like 50 at a time, right? Traditionally, in a regular market, which I feel like we are definitely in, you get an offer and, maybe there's some people that were just seeing it and they're going to let you know, hey, we may send an offer. When you receive offers, you want to work quickly and strategically, but always, always in the seller's best interest. Okay. Very important to always work in the best interest of the seller. And think about how that really applies. If there is an offer that has come in, but you know that the time frame to accept is 48 hours, and there was a showing this afternoon that you received it, you may want to go ahead and, out of courtesy, reach out to the other showing and say, hey, we just got this offer. We have 48 hours to respond. Is there any interest from your client? If there is, great. Do you think that you guys will have something over to us prior to, the next day? And then discuss how that applies as well. Never tell your clients that you have an offer on the way or they love the home and they are going to consider an offer. No, absolutely do not, because all that does is it takes them from, hey, I'm so excited, I have an offer. And then if that buyer changes their mind or the agent just was, saying something for whatever reason, then now there's no offer. You've disappointed them when it was really unnecessary. Wait till you receive the offer and have it in hand before you tell them anything about it. And on top of that, when you receive that offer, it's so exciting. It's so exciting when you're new and you just want to give them all the details. But before you get them on the phone with, hey, I have this offer, let me tell you about it. And now you've decided to, go through the pages. No, take the time, go through the offer, verify all the details and know the details, know the contract, be sure. In most cases, if it's a pre-approval or, a financed offer, call that agent, the loan officer, and just talk to them about the client. They're going to give you limited information, but they'll be able to imply whether or not they've done a thorough pre-qualification or pre-approval. And that gives you the confidence in speaking to your seller about the offer as well. If there are cash funds being presented as far as the price, as far as the offer and it's a proof of funds, definitely verify the proof of funds. Make sure it's dated within like 24 hours, not last month, because they could have had it and then spent the money and now they're just blowing smoke. Remember to include any time frames in your discussions with your sellers. So, hey, we have this offer. We have 48 hours to respond. They are offering a 10-day window for due diligence, and they can, how that sounds, depending on what type of contract it is, a residential or an as-is, you'll decide what the parameters of each time period are. They also have 45 days for their financial contingency. Talk to them about what that means, okay? Also, they want to close in 60 days. Is that a day that you think that you could work with? Do you think you could have your house, assuming everything goes through correctly? Could you vacate the home and be moving on? Because keys and property are transferred in the state of Florida unless otherwise, contracted. They are transferred at close of escrow. Close of escrow is when the closing company has all the funds. Okay, so if you're working, which we have so many new people to the state of Florida, right? So a lot of them are like, so I mean, I had a buyer that wondered how long after closing before they could take over the property. I was like, you'll have keys that day. And they were like, oh, that we didn't know that because in Michigan, da 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 da, right? So just be sure that these sellers who maybe have not sold a property in Florida, they know that that house has to be ready to go out the door. Um, let's see. If more than one offer presents at the same time, do a multiple offer net sheet. I also should have said when you receive an offer, run the numbers through a net sheet to present to your client. But also, if there are more than one offer, do a multiple offer net sheet. Okay, those are easily done on your own accord on a regular spreadsheet if you know how to do the math right. If you want to be swift and be able to run it through a calculator, almost every title office I've ever worked with has a net sheet calculator. It's not hard to plug and play, right? It does the math for you. So those are some of my details in receiving the offers and presenting them to the sellers and how to overcome any issues there. Are there any questions about receiving and presenting offers to a seller? Okay, let's move along. I must be doing an amazing job. All right, inspections and appraisals. So at this point, if you're working with a house that you're selling and working with the seller, we've already accepted the contract. They've already moved along to presenting their, the buyers have presented their escrow and they've already signed their loan docs. So now it's inspection period, right? As I said, as a seller, you may want to do a pre-inspection on the home, but just know that inspections take place during the due diligence period. So I'm going to jump to inspections before appraisers. Try to have the home free of clutter for inspections and make sure that all of the 4 points can be accessed as well as the rest of the home as much as possible. So the home inspectors are not going to move furniture around. They may push something up so that they can check some outlets or whatever and look for any kind of water damage or, saggy floors or something. They're going to look underneath the furniture. But don't make it make sure your clients don't have just boxes propped up everywhere. I mean, just because you're under contract, you still have to keep the house available for inspections. So the 4 points that I'm talking about is make sure that the home inspector can access the roof, that the home inspector can get to the hot water heater, the electric panel, and all of the units within the AC. Okay, those are big deal things. If they can't inspect them, it could mean that the buyer is now going to ask for further time so that the home inspector can come back out and thoroughly inspect it later. So prepare in advance and make sure that they can access all of those things. If it is a mobile and there is a cross space, or if it's a home that has a cross space, make sure there's an access point for them. If the buyer requests repairs, yes, your seller does not always have to, well, I guess depending on the contract you're in, residential versus as is. If you're in an as is contract, which is more common these days, the seller does not always have to accept the repair request. However, it's really your job to thoroughly help them work through that transition and that transaction in a way that is in their best interest, but also keeps the contract moving, right? A lot of sellers are like, oh, I accepted this value, or all these multiple different things about why they don't want to do repairs. But if the repair is $25, but it could mean that you stay under contract and you close, then let's see if we can work around it, right? Also, I, as a listing agent, like to consider some of the things that I tell my buyers when I'm a buyer's agent. When we walk through the house, if they're like, oh, I don't love the paint color and the floor, not my favorite. I tell them that when we do inspections, we only request repairs to things that are of safety issues that were unforeseen and can be valuable, things to repair. We don't go through and say, I can't even think, oh, this trim piece, it has like a dig in it because someone moved furniture. And if that was possibly visible and it's cosmetic, like it's off the table for me as a buyer's agent, especially if they could have seen it whenever they did their initial walkthrough. So I try to think about that when I'm looking at a repair list that's coming and I'm the seller's representative, right? Like, wow, where did these come from? If they're things that the buyer actually could have seen, then hey, it can't be because there's marker on the wall in the kitchen when there was marker on the wall in the kitchen to begin with. That can't be a repair request, right? I mean, it could ultimately, if you want to simplify it, grab some paint and paint it, but just kind of think about that. Be positive moving forward. The deal is trying to proceed. So you want to be on your seller side and try and keep them in contract and moving forward. But at the same time, you don't want to cost them a lot of money if it's unreasonable, I guess is what I'm trying to say. If the buyers are making unreasonable requests. So that's your job to communicate back and forth with the buyer's agent and be full transparent with your seller. Dealing with appraisal. So let's say you've cleared the inspection period. Now an appraisal has to be done. And we know that the appraisal is done on behalf of a financed contract, right? Most of the time, but a lot of times they're also done for cash deals because nobody wants to overpay, right? So appraisals, they are a third-party person. So they like to really stay neutral. They don't love to be present when the listing agent is there. But the way you can control that is, hey, my seller is requiring that I'm present for any showings or visits to the home. So you'll have to let me know and we need to coordinate it. Do your best to be positive and professional with these appraisers. Don't be difficult. That is not where you want to be when you're working with an appraiser. Be present if you can facilitate it. Bring comparables that can support the contract price. Even if it's a slam dunk, even if you think it's the easiest comparable price point that you came to, bring your comparables or ask if you can email them to them and leave them or hand them to them, right? That's going to help them understand where you were coming from. There are plenty of times that I get calls from appraisers on deals that I've closed or deals I've closed that are relatable to a property that they're appraising. And they'll ask me, how did I come up with that value? Or do you have the appraisal that you can share so I can appreciate how the other appraiser came up with that value? Now, if it's an FHA or a USDA or a VA, then the appraisals are visible. But, if it's a conventional loan, it won't be visible. And if the value comes in under contract price and you're working as a listing agent, really truly consider all the options. No, the seller does not have to reduce, but if it's VA, FHA, or if it's appraised at that value, likely that's the true value. Okay. Even if it means that you maybe were wrong. Okay. Just really review the appraisal, look at the comparables that the appraiser used, and understand the mindset. Ask questions if you need to the appraiser, but just kind of really communicate everything with your client. Fingers crossed you never have to deal with that, but that could be something that you deal with. And just know that the seller doesn't have to sell at the lower value, but that means that they might likely not sell at all if they're trying to get a different value. Any questions about appraisals? All right, I'm going to push through Ocala office. You guys are muted, which is fine, but if you are having questions, I don't hear you. We had them mute.
Hi.
Okay. We had them muted earlier just because of the in and out, and I didn't want all the background noise. But do you guys have any questions so far?
I'll keep it unmuted. If you are a buyer's agent and you see there's, reason and evidence for repair, would you tell the seller's agent? Would you not overstep their toes? Would you just
At what stage are you referring to? If you're talking about during the preview process, is that what you're meaning?
Yeah, like when you said don't suggest a repair, you know, if you're working with the seller unless it's like a safety issue.
Mhm.
If you're just, whether you're in the beginning stages of looking at, you know, 4 homes for a buyer, or you're getting down to the contract, would you say like suggest a repair or anything, or you know, from
Right.
on the seller's behalf, like, or
Yes,
whatever?
yes. So the when I said be careful how you proceed with the repair, I was speaking about buyers sometimes come in and they just want a long list of things and they're being very demanding. If that's the case, then I try to decipher the list a little bit and I try to have the seller focus on safety issues or value issues, right? And not cosmetics. So that's where I was going with that. If I'm representing a buyer and I know that my client is going to be interested in the house, if it is a major safety or value issue, I may go ahead and just include it in the contract. You know, the buyer loves this home, they're offering this much, but even prior to inspection, we can see that the bottom step of the porch staircase is wobbly and they're going to definitely want that corrected. So let's go ahead and negotiate that up front. It doesn't mean that when you get to the inspection period, you can't ask for other things. So if I'm representing a buyer and they want the home and we're going to put an offer in, and there are some things about the house that they would like corrected, even prior to fully inspecting the home, then yes, I would just go ahead and present that as part of the offer, because once you're under contract, the only other time you can do that is during your due diligence and inspection period. Sometimes it's better not to blindside the seller. Go ahead and give them a heads up that these are some things. Otherwise, you bring it up again during your inspection period, and the buyer has to then decide if the seller doesn't want to do it, if they're truly interested in the property. But if they wait till the inspection period, now they've spent money paying for an inspector when they already knew that they wanted those things done. So if the seller doesn't agree and they are major things that the buyer would want done, then the buyer has to either accept the seller's rejection or accept and move on with the contract or pull out of it. So does that answer your question? Okay, great. All right, I'm going to move along to headed to closing. So heading to closing with a seller is very similar to heading to closing with the buyer. At this point, you've gotten financial approvals. You know that everything is moving along. You've already checked your checklist, your task list to ensure that you have guided your client the right way. Review your title commitments, make sure that everything is lined up properly. It is very important to talk to your seller. And I always say upfront in the beginning, as I'm telling them to remove 50% of their contents, but also after like maybe a couple weeks prior to the contract closing and maybe the week again before, I talk to them about how to properly vacate the home. So many people will say, I'm going to leave those hangers, or I'm going to leave these paint cans because they need the paint color. And there's literally not a drop of paint in it. Well, take the lid off or take a picture of the actual label and send it over to, if you're the listing agent, they can send it to you and you can present those things to the other side of the transaction. But don't encourage them to leave stuff like that if there's a way to properly vacate and clean those things up, right? If they want to leave boxes of flooring, if they want to leave that stuff, communicate, hey, buyer's agent, my seller says they have some paint cans and flooring that matches the living room and whatever else. They wanted to see if the buyer would like them to leave those things. Ask the buyer, okay? Ask. Don't allow them to leave the property dirty, okay? It is supposed to be broomed clean. So does it have to be like wipe the walls and the window seals and clean everything like perfectly? No. But all of the debris in the corners and all of the debris that could be sitting in cabinets and kitchen counters and things like that should be removed. There should not be disgusting things like balls of hair or trash left on the floor. I know that this probably sounds like, gosh, what kind of people do you sell for? But even the cleanest people in a rush to get out of their house, they're just done, right? So it's really important to talk about that. There are listing agents out there because they take a higher percent of the commission. They will hire people to come in and do a move out clean. It could be something that you tell your client, if that's something you want to offer, you pay for the move out clean, but that could be a way you get them to choose you. That's a great feature, right? Just know there's a cost involved, and run your numbers, run your time involved or whatever. But the big thing I'm trying to point out here is just remember to talk to them about how to properly vacate the home. Remind them that the house has to be empty and turn keys over on the day of closing. If they're going to have to come back for things, it needs to be discussed in advance. Like, hey, we have a U-Haul trailer that's loaded, but after we finish signing and closing, we're going to have to go back and pick it up. Talk about it. Or we left some things like a grill on the porch and we couldn't get it right away, but we're going to come back for it. Is there a better time? Talk about it, because the moment the closing ends, that property isn't theirs anymore. They can't just come and go as they want to. And you want to be courteous, and you don't want any bad taste left in anybody's mouth. So talk about that. Always schedule a final walkthrough before closing. So I know everybody tends to think, hey, a final walkthrough is for the buyer's side, right? I walk through all of my sales prior, all of the houses that I sell prior, because I do not want to be surprised. I have been surprised. It is not fun. Closing gets delayed if the buyers are real adamant. I wish Mindy was here. She's a newer agent. She was the buyer side of the transaction, and the listing agent didn't know that the sellers were leaving a twin bed behind. The sellers claimed that they thought because the buyers had so many kids that they would really enjoy the bed. Well, the bed was broke. It was heavy duty. It was heavy as all get out. And the buyers, Mindy, they didn't want the burden of it. They didn't want the bed. It cosmetically wasn't something they wanted. So it wasn't communicated. It was assumed. So don't be that listing agent, right? Know what the buyer's agent's about to walk into. Know that the house is completely vacant and clean and in good presentation for the buyers. It leaves a good taste in everybody's mouth, and it takes 5 or 10 minutes. Okay. You walk through, oh, there's no hangers in here. There's no clothes. And also the other thing about it is, like I said before, the sellers are going through so much. There could be a drawer that they forgot to open, and there could be valuable information in there that they left behind. So you need to go through and open all the doors, closets, check the drawers, check underneath the sinks, all the things, right? There's multiple reasons for it. Then, of course, when you're scheduling closing, make sure that you coordinate a time for your sellers that is convenient for them, but also convenient for everybody. And then lastly is beyond closing, which I feel like is just like a no-brainer, but we'll just go over some of the things. What to do as a realtor after a closing. As a realtor, there are several things that you can do after a closing to ensure a positive experience for your clients and build your reputation as a professional in the industry. Bring a closing gift or send a thank you note, or send a thank you gift to your clients afterwards. So a lot of times we show up with something at closing. That's fine. In the past, I have done all of the things. I've shown up at closings with just a card. I've shown up with closing with the card and gift card. I've showed up with liquor. I've showed up with wine. I've showed up with something quirky that made me think of a conversation that we had. I've showed up with gift baskets. I have left. One of the things that I did for a long time that I really loved for my buyers is I wanted, when they walked back into their home for the first time, I wanted it to feel a little homey. So I tried my best to pick out like a wreath and a welcome mat and like something to front door presentation, right? That was my thank you to them. I tried to make it feel homey, but these people are on their way out. Maybe they're buying another home. Maybe you're still going to continue to work with them, but you just want to show some sort of, appreciation for that. And I always say, make it personal. Okay. Make it personal. When the closings happened, or when you know that there's this positive vibe going on and their seller isn't overwhelmed, don't wait too long, but ask them, verbally ask them, hey, would you mind if I sent you a link for a review or a testimonial? It's important for my marketing. It's important for people to see and read things, or even hear if they want to do a video video testimonial about my services, so they know that I'm not just, vouching for myself, that other people vouch for me. So that's something important to remember to do. If you're helping them buy their next home, it's even better. Continue that relationship. Check in periodically to see how they're doing. Maybe they relocated. Maybe they are in an RV traveling the world. Don't forget to keep in touch, because life changes often and unexpectedly, and you never know when you could help them. Also, checking in with them also keeps you top of mind, so that if their sister or their brother or their mom or somebody else needs to sell a home, they can remember, great experience. She's staying in touch. We love her. She commented on my Facebook picture, all those things, right? So think about how you want to work your business and check in periodically to see how they're doing. Also, I highly recommend to send a thank you text or email or a handwritten note to the lenders, to the title agents, and to the other agents that you've worked with, even if they were difficult, even if it was a hard transaction. Don't focus on the negative, positivity, because what you want is, you want the other agent to want to show your properties. You want the title agents to want to do your searches and thoroughly prep for closing. You want lenders to be in favor of how you work with your client and how smooth the transaction goes, because you never know when a lender might say, hey, Danielle, or hey, so-and-so, I have a lead for you, right? Show your appreciation. And then lastly, don't forget to post about it. Post about your closings on social media or via an email campaign that you send out. But don't just do it for, hey, I sold something, I got a check, I made money, I did this. But hey, I did a good job for this person. I worked really hard for this transaction. Your social media post doesn't have to just say sold. It could be, so excited to have sold this transaction, sold this home for this client who I met here. They are amazing people. The transaction was difficult. Use it as a campaign. Use it to sell how you handled things, how you were able to overcome obstacles, and that you successfully got them to the closing table. That's really the more big picture of what I want you to sell on social media, not just, hey, I closed a deal. Hey, I got paid. I'm a top selling producing agent. Those are great things to say. There are plenty of people who only care about that, but just know that you want people to like you, you want people to trust you, and you want them to know that you can do a good job for them. And you say more in that when you tell them stories on social media and when you share the details about transactions. So that is pretty much all I got for working with sellers. There are a ton of details that I did not include, things that you will 100% need to know, like how to fill out a listing agreement and how to fill out HOA addendums and seller's disclosures and the proper way to actually facilitate all of that. And that's why you have wonderful mentors and ASMs. And we are a team, and we're happy to help you through that process as well. But today's class was just some big points to not forget, some tips and how to handle things. And that's it. So thank you very, very much for tuning in. Appreciate the time that you put aside to be here for the education class. Does anybody have any questions? You said no, Liz?
Thank you so much.
All right. Well, thank you for tuning in. I appreciate it. And everybody have a great day.
Bye.